Hello, 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 people. I'm Szebastian Onne, the almost naked CEO. I'm here because I care, because I give a damn. And you're watching Unleash Leaders of Change, Season 7, Episode 2. And I remember that. How exciting is that? Because I always forget. But today I'm going to start with an apology. An apology that hasn't been asked of me, and an apology that even my guest said is not required, but I believe it is required. At the beginning of last episode, the premiere episode of season 7 with Joanna Rawbone, I used the term, I'm going to grill you in this interview. I know most people will say, so what? But I strongly believe words matter. I, when I did not know better, probably I wouldn't have even noticed at all. But to me now, having done so much of therapy in my own life and being an advocate against no bullying, against respecting people, respecting people, to use the words like "I will grill you" in the interview is something that I think is wrong, and I do apologize for that because I know how it felt when I was being bullied, when I was being told that I'm gonna get grilled, how that impacted my life, my childhood, my youth, even my workplaces. So, for that reason, I do apologize for using that word. I did not have any intention other than just being cheeky. And sometimes being cheeky gets me in trouble. And I'm sorry for that. Let's now talk about this amazing, incredible woman. Well, she's giving a presentation for sure, but she's going to do a lot more than that today. How do you recreate your life after it has been upended by a massive accident, an incident that literally stops everything in your life? Your career stops. You cannot physically do the minutest things on your own. And suddenly you find yourself dependent on others, and all you can feel is helpless, and you question, why me? That's the first thing that happens when we go through something really difficult. We ask, why me? I've been there, so I exactly know how it feels. But I've also been in a place where I have, from why me, changed my thinking to, what is this teaching me? I do talk about something called CTCR: clarity, truth, courage, and resilience. But I'm not going to go into my own anagram right now. All I will tell you is, once you learn to accept the truth that you're in right now, it becomes so much easier to deal with the challenges that you're going through, no matter how hard they are. And I'm not saying these challenges are easy. I'm not saying that everybody can deal with the same problem the same way. But what I'm saying is, you can give up, give in, throw the towel, or you can ask yourself, okay, so this is where I stand today, and where do I go from here, and how do I get where I need to be? And that's what today's guest, Winnie Anderson, is all about. We're going to talk about courageous storytelling. We're going to talk about being vulnerable and how that plays a really important role in business, in relationships, in life, and beyond. So, without further ado, let's welcome Winnie Anderson. Hey, Winnie, how you going?
Good. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you. As I said, we had so much fun just promoting this show. So I'm looking forward to it. Really, I think this conversation is going to make a lot of people think things, and that's the aim of this show:
I
to
hope so.
create change, to unleash the powers of people within that can, that makes the world a better place. So, Winnie, I don't do the bios and the scripted introductions and all that. So, let's actually just jump into the Winnie Anderson, or the little Winnie that you were when you were a little child, 5, 6, 7 years old, whatever you can remember. What was the little Winnie like?
Um, Inquisitive, very active, um, already attached to the dog that she had grown up with, who was a puppy when I was little. Um, Very much a child of being outside and being a small town girl, but also being very connected to my family. I'm very lucky that I grew up in a small town, in a very big family, and in a big house full of family. So there were always cousins, aunts, uncles, and just so many people to be around.
Beautiful. But it wasn't always easy, was it? So, I'm going to directly jump into, before we go into the corporate Winnie that we wrote, today, the, change maker, the content strategist, I want to go into a little bit of the difficult part, the tribulations that you had. So the childhood wasn't all that amazing as well. There were other things that you went through that were difficult.
Yes.
Um, and if you're okay sharing a little bit about that, you went through a little bit of abusive childhood, and if you don't mind sharing what exactly happened.
Yeah, I went through a lot of abusive childhood. I grew up in a family with a mother who did not want to have children. And she made that very clear to each of us by telling us that we were unwanted. She told us that often on a regular basis. My father was someone who was perceived by others to be a saint for many reasons, and he was a good guy, but he had a temper. And while he tried to control it, he didn't always. And before I was a year old, he pulled one arm out of the socket. Before I was 5, he had pulled the other arm out of the socket. But it was my mother who was my full-time tormentor, if you will. She was incredibly unhappy with herself and her life, and she took that out on all of us, but primarily on me. Oh, I can't hear you.
So sorry, I forgot to
That's
unmute
okay.
myself.
I
So I
shut
was
you.
saying, I know this is an odd question, and maybe at that age you didn't even realize, but did you ever question why you were treated that way
Yes.
compared to other children?
Yes, I did. When it started to dawn on me, and it didn't take very long, that I was treated differently. And while I might not have vocalized that, I certainly wondered about it. And the real question for me, and this is painful, the real question that I asked myself is, why does my mommy hate me so much? Because even at that, at that young age, you're smart enough to know when another child doesn't like you. You're smart enough to pick up on that. And it took me years to remember that, but I had actually written down on little pieces of paper, why does my mommy hate me? And I hid them in a desk in my bedroom. Well, my mother found them at some point and saved them. Now, just ask yourself, if you had recognized that your child hated you, I'm going to guess you would be mortified. Your mother would be mortified. She would make every effort to make sure that you understood you weren't hated. And what made you think that? My mother didn't, because I busted her. She hated me. And now with the gift of age, I can understand that misplaced anger and those emotions, but you're still the grown up. We're all supposed to manage ourselves. So, yeah, my mom hated me.
That must have been really, really rough because as I'm just listening here, I'm just thinking, I mean,
It's
a mother is
horrible.
supposed to be
Right.
the
Your
protector.
mother's
A
supposed to
mother
love
is
you.
supposed to be your love, love you, protect you. uh, Again, we
Right.
can't speak cliche because we know there's all kind of people in this world, but that's the thing. And to actually be in a place, you know as you was sharing with me offline as well, and I hope it's okay to share that, she made it very clear to you that, to all the kids, that she didn't want to have children. I don't understand how such a person then goes ahead and have multiple children, and then tell. And I can never understand the impact it has on a person's psyche. Having said that, my own mother has gone through that, so I kind of have a little inkling, but I will never understand because thankfully I've had really great parents. So from that stage,
Mhm.
and this isn't something that you realized right away. This is something you realized at a very crucial time in your life. So can we talk about the accident and what happened and what actually
Yeah.
brought up this realization?
Yeah. Throughout my childhood, as any child would, I worked to suppress that and to focus on what was good in my life. I really did. And I was surrounded by adults, that there were plenty of adults who loved me. So at least I had that. And I had come to the realization in my early 20s that what I had gone through is the label of abuse. And I thought, I've dealt with that. I'm mature and I'm just going to move on. And, my mother's my mother. So then I was 36 years old, and it was a beautiful late winter, early spring day. And my last memory is pulling out of my driveway. And the next memory is waking up in my car, asking the first responder what they were doing. And they were trying to cut me out of the car. So it was, my big injury is a head injury. This is my primary injury. And I was in the hospital for a week. And the recovery process, once you have a head injury, you have a head injury. It's ongoing. The average recovery is 15 years. I'm well past that now. I'm left with permanent injuries. It's a lifetime of learning to manage them. But through the recovery process, one day it just hit me like a ton of bricks that what I was trying to deal with was actually connected to the abuse. So let me just back up for a second. I describe a brain injury as if you had a filing cabinet, and that's your brain, and you have all these drawers, right? We remember back in the day we had tall filing cabinets at work, and you have all these drawers, and you have hanging file folders with manila folders inside of them, and they hang in the drawers. So a brain injury is as if somebody took every drawer in your filing cabinet, dumped it out, smeared it around, threw things in the air, and then just threw the contents back in the drawers and said, you figure it out. So the recovery process is actually trying to reorganize the files in your head so that you can do the things you want to do when you want to call on those skills. The theory is that no memory is ever actually lost, it's just misfiled in your head. So as I was going through my recovery process and really a reinvention of myself professionally, one day I was really frustrated, and I was thinking to myself, why can't I do these things that I want to do professionally? What what is in my way? And then it just hit me that what I wanted and what I had were now actively in opposition to each other. The strategies that I had created to survive an abusive childhood were successful in my childhood, but they were now actively holding me back. And once I had that realization, it was if somebody behind me had opened up a closet and every skeleton came tumbling out. And they really do say that your life flashes in front of your eyes. I relived all of my abuse in a matter of weeks. And it was horrible. It was really horrible.
I cannot even imagine that, to be honest. Wow, that is quite a bit. And okay, so
I know. How do you unpack all that?
did you just hear that little bang? I hope you
No.
didn't. I mean, it's just incredible. I'm going to take a couple of comments that have just come through. I'm going to read the name on the side because I believe it's not showing up. So Georgia R. Day says she's saying hello, but she's tagged you, so the only name is showing up. And then Santosh is saying, "Oh, Winnie, I'm so sorry you had to go through that."
Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, even today, I believe to be in that place and to not only you're dealing with an instant uh, physical hardship that you just entered into, and then it brings back everything else that you probably thought you have already resolved or did not even realize. It must not have been easy. That moment of realizing the physical disability, the mental challenges, and then realizing how you've been treated. My biggest question really is, how did you cope with that? Because it's not
It
easy.
wasn't. I can tell you, it wasn't pretty. I cried a lot, and you feel very alone. And so, at the time that this happened, I was several years into the accident. Still, I wasn't at the halfway point, and I don't think, in my recovery. My husband and I were living apart. He had gotten a job in another state. So here I had a breakdown, and I had this emotional breakdown, and of course I have to tell him. I can't just go through this and not tell him what I'm dealing with. So we would only talk once a day. And I sent him an email. I'm a writer, so I tend to write better than I talk sometimes. So I sent him an email and I said, "This is what happened. And this is what this recovery process has triggered. And I need help. I need help processing this." And that wasn't easy either, to say that. So, of course, I'm very fortunate. He was very supportive, and of course, felt bad that he wasn't with me, but wanted to help me in whatever way he could. Um, and I knew I had reached a point where I needed a therapist. I needed somebody that I could actually talk to, who was not going to be emotionally attached to me. I have friends, I have my husband. The challenge there is these people love you. And it pains them to see you in pain. So it was really very hard for my husband to, and still is, for him to witness me in emotional pain. And I didn't know, should I talk to my siblings? How should I handle this? And what about the times when I had a day when I just could not work? I couldn't function. What do I say? So yeah, there was an awful lot to deal with. So how I dealt with it: one, I confronted it. I acknowledged that it was happening. I asked for help. I took action to get professional help from an expert. And I knew that I needed therapy, not a coach. I knew that at this point, I needed somebody with real training to help me. Um, and that I needed to focus on getting well. I had confidence that I could do it. And of course, I wanted to do it now, I didn't want it to take any longer than it was already taking. So I was naturally impatient, but I knew I had to do it.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that, because I know it's not easy. I absolutely know it's not easy. Being vulnerable is, I think, the biggest challenge that we have as human beings. The social construct tells us to not be weak, to not share your pain. Um, these are things that are not written anywhere. There is no official rule, but that's what we are raised with subconsciously. Don't sit like that, don't say that, don't cry like a girl, don't boys don't cry, all that. We have been taught that being vulnerable is being weak, being vulnerable is a bad thing. And so for you to come up and defy that social construct, to have the courage to actually share your story, is, you're not only helping yourself, you're helping tons of people out there. Everybody who's going to watch this, there's a part of them that will say, yep, I've gone through something like that. And if she can share, if she can uh, be in tears on a show, so can I. I can talk to people. If she can talk about going to therapy, so can I. And I think that's the most important thing. People run away from the resources and the support that's out there, and all because of shame, all because of the
That's
embarrassment
right.
that is, again, I'll
Yeah.
go back to the social construct. So
Yeah.
I want to go a little bit into a different side of this. All of this happened. You have gone through such challenges. Uh, if you will, um, it pretty much destroyed your life. It pretty much brought you to a point where you didn't know
It did.
um,
I was a
what's
mess.
next.
Yeah, I was a mess.
Absolutely.
When the accident happened, I was 36 years old. Had reached the top of my game professionally at that point. I was the director of human resources for a large chapter of the American Red Cross. I had, and to get that job, I had left a job that for a company that loved me. I was loved, I was valued, I was well respected in my industry and in the town that I worked in. I worked in Atlantic City at a casino hotel. And I had a great career with the Red Cross in the time that I had worked there. And I was about to be promoted again. They had created the director of HR job for me. They were creating a new job, assistant executive director. And so things are good. And here I am. I have this accident, and instantly my life was changed. Um, my injury is here. This is the area of executive functioning. And this is my primary injury. This is the area of impulse control. And that's what emotional regulation, that's where it falls. It's where temper and temperament is controlled. And I suddenly, my whole body was a mess. I couldn't think, I couldn't focus, I couldn't see. I had a hard time typing. I couldn't function as a professional. And I took about 2 weeks off and then tried to go back to work. And I would sit there with my fingers on the keyboard and I could hear what I was trying to type in my head, but I couldn't make my fingers move. And my first day back at work, I tried to explain, because you don't want to repeat the same story over and over again. I tried to explain to everyone, here's what happened to me. Here's what I remember. Here's what I don't remember. Here's what I don't know. And here's what I don't think I can do right now. And here's what I need from you to help me. I was shocked at the little support and empathy. I got nothing. It was really shocking to me.
And that's what it comes down to. That's what it's been going on in my mind since I know your story a little bit, that a company and an organization that's actually, now I'm not bagging anybody, but an organization that's supposed to be helping the world, that's supposed to be supporting everyone,
Right. Right.
isn't doing good enough in supporting their own.
Right.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know how to react to that, but really that must have been so disappointing as their own personnel, and doing what you do, being at the top of your game, and to be there and then to actually not get the help you need. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
my of course I had a whole team of doctors that I had to go to through the recovery process, and one of them was a psychiatrist. And my psychiatrist, Howard, was a great guy. And I went to see him really to learn to control what was going on in my head, to start to put the files back in the folders, and especially to learn how to control my emotions again, because I was really a baby when it came to emotional regulation. So
Right.
instead of something just touching my heart, I would boo-hoo just instantly. So I you can't you can't live a professional life when you're bursting into tears, although you would think being at the Red Cross would be great, because I was at work the day that the Columbine massacre happened, and we were all crying, and that was great to be at a
Right.
place where it was okay to cry. But Howard said to me that he said, one day you'll be very sorry that the accident didn't leave you with a giant scar across your face. He said, because frankly, you look too good. Nobody's going to believe there's anything wrong with you. He said, nobody's going to cut you any slack. And there are going to be times when they think you made the whole story up. And I was already in that place that, yeah, I wish I had a big scar. I wish that there was a big sign that said, I need some care. Be nice to me.
It is unfortunate that we even have to think that way, but that's the reality. That's the world we live in, where I call it, it is a well-known term, but it is the invisible disability that people don't
Right.
see, and they make all the judgments. It's a very simple and very basic example, but people can stop you at the disabled parking and say you don't look like disabled, not knowing exactly at all what you're going through. They haven't even waited to see how you speak. Maybe you speak in a way that you can't even coordinate yourself. Maybe as soon as you start walking out of the car, you can barely coordinate, or maybe the disability is not visible, but to get from the car to the store, it's taking you every ounce of your energy to not fall, to not give up on life. So that's what's unfortunate in our humanity right now, that we need evidence before we trust people. It should be
Yeah.
the other way. We talk about innocent until proven guilty, but in today's day and age, you're guilty the minute social media says you are. And
Right. Yeah.
it's hard. I'm going to take a couple of comments that have come in, and I believe you'll appreciate them. Sue's Caravan Renovations says, I'm speechless. So sorry you had to go through this.
Thank
And
you.
then she also says, wow, a go getter. It must have been so painful emotionally more than physically. And let's talk about that. It's not the injury itself. That injuries, yes, disability injuries, and as you talk about, I mean, as you even talk about where the injury is, I can picture it. I can still actually feel you, as if you can actually still experience it. You can still see it, what we can't see. So it's the emotional part that must have been the really heartbreaking journey for you.
It was. One of the worst parts is, and of course, this is part of the challenge. Every person who has a head injury is different, and every head injury is different. But I can remember what I was like before the accident. And I remember what it was like for me to never hesitate to grab a word, to never get lost in the middle of a sentence, to never forget, to never need to write anything down. And when you experience that kind of, when I experienced that kind of blow to my head, it was a tremendous blow to my psyche and my ego, because I really thought I was a smart person. And to suddenly not be able to tie your shoes, literally, I couldn't tie my shoes. I could sit there, and believe me, there were times when I just flat out boohooed and had an Oreo and tried to soothe myself, but I had to keep going because I knew I had to get to the end of this. And the really worst part for me, this might make you laugh. One of the things that I prided myself on when I worked in human resources was that I was the calm in the center of the storm. That at one point I worked in every area of HR other than comp and benefits. So people came to me that, I heard grievances, I settled arguments, I gave people my opinions. And to now be the emotional train wreck that I saw myself as was the most infuriating, frustrating thing. I thought of it as God's cruel joke to take a perfectionist, give them a head injury, and take somebody who prided themselves on not letting anybody see them sweat. And I couldn't make myself stop crying. But of course, part of that, and this is why the abuse and the accident are interrelated, I learned how to suppress my emotions at a very early age. I would never let my mother know she hurt me. I would never give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. So I feel like this is, decades of pent-up emotion that gets let out. It's not pretty. It's very frustrating. But
I cannot even imagine, to be honest. I mean, it's so hard just sitting here and listening. It's so hard. Very honestly, I'm going off camera because I'm getting so emotional listening to it and feeling like, wow, it's for a
but that's
second,
part of
leaving
it,
all the negative aside, you have been so strong.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to take a couple of comments, really beautiful comments coming in. Um, so, High Tech Mother says, "Thank you for being brave, Winnie," and I agree with her. I thank you as well because you're not, you're being an example for many people. So, thank you. August says, "Winnie, thank you for sharing your story so bravely. How and when did you decide you're going to take charge?" Wow, you've just stolen my question, August, but thank you.
That's a really great, that's a really
Yeah. So,
great
how did you
question.
feel? When did you know that you have to change things around?
I think I have more degrees than a thermometer, and I've taken a ton of postgraduate courses, and I've always been fascinated by the mind and why people do the things that we do. And we know that it's a combination of, right, it's not environment only, it's this combination of DNA, the environment, conditioning, all of these things go into what one of my bosses used to call a gumbo of who we become. And I think that that's the magic of what made me me, that I inherited. I like to think the best parts of my mother. I inherited some of her obstinance, her stubbornness, and as well as through my early years, there were enough people in important roles in my life that let me know I really was smart and I really was loved. This is why, for me, when I got to go to school, it was freeing because I had validation that I really was smart. One of the things my mother used to say to me was that I was stupid. I'm 3. How smart do you want me to be? I mean, I'm 3 years old. What am I stupid about? So to then go to school and get A's, to be praised when I gave an answer, to be praised for those things. I remember my little brain thinking, this person thinks I'm good. Mommy thinks I'm bad. But all these people say I'm good. Maybe she's not really right. Could that be possible? And at that age, I started to have this wrestling in my head of, this person tells me this, but all of these people are telling me something different. Now, of course, that scarred me. I'm not going to tell you
Right.
it didn't. To hear that from your own mother, and to have also the unpredictability of her emotions and what she would say. But that was the first hint that maybe she wasn't as right as I thought she was. It's that little chink in the armor. So after I got home from the accident, from the hospital, I made the decision then that, again, it's funny the things you remember. When I was released from the hospital, the doctor never even looked at me. He just said, you have a brain injury. This is as good as it's ever going to get. And I remember thinking, wrong. And it was expletive filled. There's
Yeah.
no way. I'm not living like this. Forget it. Not at 36, I'm not. And I just
Yeah.
knew that whatever this was the hand I was dealt, and I was going to win. I was going to beat it as best I could.
Well, I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad that you stayed brave. I cannot say, it's okay to not even be brave, but it's incredible to find the strength in the darkest hour and do what you have done. And I really appreciate that. Georgia is saying, Winnie, you are truly a not bacon, sorry, beacon of light and courage. Such an
Thank you.
incredible example to all of us. I'm clearly hungry. Sorry about that. But no, that's truly, that is an incredible example. And you're a living example. Let's shift things a little bit. I want to talk about now you're helping other people, other entrepreneurs deal with their vulnerabilities in running their businesses, in creating their content. Um,
Right.
how do you use your own challenges, your own story to, because we're talking about, after all, courageous storytelling. How do you use the storytelling and the vulnerability to build brands and to help others?
Well, I think we both know that that brand essence grows out of the spirit, the personality of the founder of the business. So I work with a range of businesses, from micros, solo professionals, to partnerships, husbands and wives often, life partners, to larger organizations, the mid-sized companies. And to recognize that everything has made you you. And you might think that there are some ugly parts of you, right? I don't wish an accident or abuse on anyone, but I know that there are a lot more people that have gone through this than we like to think that there are. So, in recognizing what about your story is an active part of your brand, and what about your story just informs the brand. One of the common reactions when any of us has a life altering experience, whether it's a near death experience, it's a sudden illness, an injury like mine, there's a big asking of why, right? there are people who have less serious injuries than mine who die. So yeah, why did I survive? And remembering humans are sense-making organisms, so recognizing that this now, so is this thing that happened to me, is this a new direction I'm supposed to go in? Am I supposed to help others like me? Or am I just going to own this as part of me, and it informs who I am, but it doesn't make me who I am, if that makes sense. So it's sharing my story and recognizing that there is something there that will resonate with others. Where it comes up for my clients is in a couple of ways. One is being vulnerable and voicing their opinion. So we've been cultured through corporate life that you can't always say what you really think, right? You choose your battles wisely. You recognize when you can voice an opinion, when you need to soften it, that sort of thing. So recognizing that you're in charge now, and people are often paying you for your opinion, so you really can voice that. It becomes part of your total point of view, and that's, to me, is part of the essence of a brand. So helping them recognize when their story, because it's not just the story you tell others, it's the story you tell yourself. And recognizing when one of those stories is in your way, and which story needs to be amplified and which just needs to be resolved within you. It's a lot, if that makes sense. Oh, you're muted.
Once again, I forgot to unmute myself. I love doing that. I said, no, absolutely. That makes total sense. And, and that's what it is. I love how you've taken something so difficult, so hard, to actually use it as a resource, as a tool to help your clients, to help them understand the importance of vulnerability, and to really be able to tell their story from a place of authenticity. We throw out these words, buzzwords, authenticity and everything, but you're actually doing that. You're actually helping them get there. And there's a relief in that place when you are speaking from a place of authenticity. There's nothing you have to pretend about. There's nothing you have to fight against. Only thing you have to focus on is what's the best I can deliver. And I really love that. I want to take a couple of comments before we go forward. Unlearn to Rebuild team is saying it's all in the mindset. Bravo, Winnie. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I tell
it
people
is.
that accident was my greatest gift. It's the greatest gift I ever received. I would have liked it in a nicer package, but it was the greatest gift I ever received.
Oh, there is nothing wrong with this package, so don't just shut up. Okay, I'm not gonna offer an apology for this. Shut up. High Tech Mother says, sorry to take you back to this, but how did you resolve your relationship with your mother, or how do you accept what you went through? Wow.
Yeah, that is such a powerful question and such an important issue that so many people then have to deal with, right? What do I do with this? Do I confront my abuser? Do I talk to the siblings? What do I do with this? And I thought long and hard about it. I read a lot of books, which I'm happy to share with Szebastian so he can share it with all of you. I had therapy, and I had to make that decision. I knew that it would be an unproductive conversation, frankly. So when I had this, when I was going through all of this, my mother was in her mid 60s. So as I started to have these memories, she's in her mid to late 60s. And she was losing her hearing. So it would have been a hard conversation, literally. So I really thought about this. Am I going to confront her? And what I decided was, first of all, I had to take a break. The only reason I went home, of course, I was married now and living apart, living away from my family. The only reason I would go home to visit was because I had a sister who was still living with my mother. And I felt I needed to give that poor woman a break. I needed to be there for my sister because my mom was mean. She was mean to everybody and she abused everybody. And I felt like I had to stand up for my sister. So I would go home, but I would be re traumatized because, of course, my mom would be mean to me. And I remember one day when I just said, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm not doing it. And I got up from dinner in the middle of the meal and I said, I'm done with this. I'm done with you. And I left. And I probably took off about 8 weeks before I went home again. And I just, when that happened, I just decided you're not walking all over me anymore. And I'm not putting up with this crap anymore. When you're mean, I'm calling you on it. And that's kind of
And I think
how,
that's the most important thing. There comes a time when you just have to say no. That's enough. Enough
right.
is enough. And it doesn't matter whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's your colleagues, or anybody really. I've been at that place, so I understand that.
Yeah.
Uh, it just kind of freezes me to think that people can do that to their own children. But again, I know that because the birth giver of my own mother has done that, and my own father's birth givers have done that. So I don't even call them grands, I call them what I just did. So I can relate to that. Going back to the business again a little bit, uh, taking all of this, why do you feel, do you in fact, I'd rather change that. Do you feel that an entrepreneur needs to share their story, needs to share what they're going through to be able to connect with their audience to succeed? uh, you know how do you see that?
I I think it depends on the person and what their business is all about. So and I would never tell any person that, well, you have to, uh, but I think you have to acknowledge your story to yourself. So do you tell your story to others? No, not necessarily. I don't think that's a requirement, but for those of us who are solo professionals, I will sometimes use it as an example, as a learning opportunity. I might bring up a time when I struggled, or usually what I can see is, because of course I've lived through this now, I can recognize something is holding someone back, or I know that there's a deeper issue here and that telling it may be powerful. So, for example, when so many of us might be working with people who are trying to stand out, right? You're trying to build your business, you're trying to get to the next level in your career. So we're coaching or consulting with people who are making that effort to step into the spotlight. And if you can't do it, right? If you can't step into the spotlight yourself, but you're trying to encourage others, you're probably talking to yourself. So that might be a time for you to really reflect on, am I really doing this myself? And and then what do I have that I can draw on to use as it, when I'm an old school teacher too, and we used to call them teachable moments, right? What is a teachable moment from your past that, when you can communicate that effectively, can really help that person say, if they could get through that, I can get through this. If they did that, yes, this makes sense to me. So I think each person chooses what to share when it's appropriate. And you also have to be able to communicate it in a clear and effective manner. I've seen people share some things, and we refer to it as TMI or oversharing or whatever, right? And I'm sure you've seen this yourself, especially on social media, where I've
I
watched
have done it myself.
I've watched people and I've thought, wow, that might have been crossing a line there. And
Mhm.
well, then the toothpaste is out of the tube, so you've got to deal with that issue too. So
Yeah. And I guess that's where your role as content strategist comes, to actually help them
yeah,
not only be vulnerable, be strong enough to share the story, but also structure it in a way. Now, you and I
right,
work in the same field, so structure it in the right way that people understand it's not too much for them, it's not too little for them. It
right.
is it is really about conveying the message effectively more than anything else that creates the whole thing.
It
Um,
is.
and I ask this, from personal curiosity as well, and I'm sure people out there are wondering. There are times when people have a story, they have a blockage, it needs to get out there, but they are, again, those same social construct, they're too ashamed to share, or they feel too scared, or they
Right.
feel like people are going to judge me. How do you work with those clients? How do you convince them to, or do you change your strategy in how they share their story while
Yeah.
still, not being completely vulnerable?
So that would not be something that we would actively work on together, but that would be something that might come up in the process of doing our work. For example, the work that I do is really around what's referred to as buyer enablement. So we're creating tools to help their clients buy, right? So what that person might find though is what my client might find is that they struggle to get their own message out. So I will then, I don't think of myself as a coach, but you have to ask a few coaching questions sometimes. What are you telling yourself in this moment? And a lot of times, because I'm an old school corporate trainer as well as an old classroom teacher, I've taught people how to write. I've taught business writing. So
Right.
people will automatically start have flashbacks to their grammar school teacher, and that I can't write. I don't write well. Well, okay, you're not Shakespeare. But you're not selling to somebody who wants Shakespeare. You're selling to somebody who wants plain English. They're in a hurry. So it's helping my clients to see how their clients are actually very similar to them and giving them permission to just share it in a very natural way. And that's the beauty of, marketing, as you well know, is different from writing a memo or writing a policy. And often your customer wants you to communicate in plain English
I,
too.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest takeaway, to give yourself the permission to feel, to be vulnerable, to share your story. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be everything out there, but
I'll give
just
you an
giving yourself
example.
permission to actually. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'll give you a great
No, go
example
on, go
of
on.
this. So I have this person just beats themselves up because it's taking me too long to create this. It's the first draft isn't any good, and I'm dragging my feet. And what I've had to help her see is, first of all, there's a difference between percolating and procrastinating. So
Right.
as a creative, we both know that there really is a genuine difference between these two concepts. So you need.
Huge.
Oh my gosh, they're so is. Sometimes they can
Yeah.
they can mask each other, but really
Right.
there's a big difference. And so it's giving, again, it's all about giving yourself permission to build in percolating time into and recognizing it's part of your process. Part of my process, I had to go down and make banana bread the other day because I was working through a problem in my head. Sometimes I go out and take a walk. That's all percolating as because my brain is still working. So giving yourself permission to be fully you in all your wackiness, and then and drawing on that, to then, okay, this is my message. I'm going to throw this stuff out, but I'm going to use this, right?
I absolutely love that. And, I usually actually have a little funny analogy to that, processing and procrastination are the cousins who barely talk, but when they do, it can be messy. So I think it's a little bit of that. I've got a few comments again. I want to put them up. Unlearn to Rebuild says it's all in the mindset. Bravo, Winnie. And
Thank you.
intentional team, that's my team. RK from my team says, we'd love the list of, I believe he means books you're
Books.
mentioning. Thank you. Yep, he said main books. So he's saying we love the list of books you're mentioning. Absolutely, RK and everybody, will get the list from Winnie and get her little treasure and share with
Yes.
everybody else. But unfortunately, our time is running out, and I do have some exciting questions to ask you. So I'm gonna do a little bit of shift here. We've talked all heavy and all that. Let's talk a little bit about a little fun side. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody else watching on LinkedIn and YouTube, please make sure to go and subscribe. Please make sure to support not just Winnie's story. There are so many stories that we bring on Unleash Leaders of Change and on Dreamaniac TV. Please go ahead and subscribe, like, comment, share the story with anybody who might find this powerful and who might need to hear this message right now. We will really appreciate when you like, comment, and subscribe. You support us, support everybody else out there. So please do. Winnie, here's a little rapid fire round that I have for you. Um, what mistake have you made in your life that you want others to be aware of and not make?
Listen to yourself more. Trust yourself.
That's
So my,
beautiful. I love
so
that.
my mistake is not doing that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I love that. Listen to yourself more. We don't do that enough. We listen to the noises too much. Okay. Um, if you had $2 billion, but you only had 1 hour to spend and you could not spend it on yourself, what would you do? 2 billion only, not a lot.
Okay, so to spend, I would set up secret accounts for my nieces and not tell them that I had the money for them. I would buy a giant house for my sisters, cousins, and us to all live together, but have our own wings. Then I would buy a building, multiple buildings. I would create shelters for senior pets and for disabled pets. And then I would buy up vacant land and turn it back to nature. So it's a giant preserve. Money spent.
I love that. I think when that happens, we need to join hands because I would love to do that with you. So I'm hoping that $2 billion come to you right away. Okay, my final question for the day. If you could collaborate with any one person, dead or alive, who would it be? What would you collaborate on and why?
Do they have to be real? Because
It's your game. It's your game. You choose that.
who I would collaborate with is Sherlock Holmes, my hero. And the reason I would collaborate with him is because he's the ultimate thinking machine. And I would love to solve a tremendous problem. And I would love to collaborate with Sherlock. He's my hero. He taught me how to think.
I absolutely love that. Well, thank you so much. But before we close up, I just want to ask for people out there, all the Winnies and Sebastians out there and everybody else in between, what's the one message you have for entrepreneurs and, women entrepreneurs, especially, to be honest, in terms of when they are trying to create the business and facing challenges and struggling with vulnerability, what's the message you have for them?
The message I have for you, if you're struggling with vulnerability, is to recognize that it is actually your greatest strength. That if you can focus on those you're serving and how they would benefit from all you have to offer, you would give of yourself even more.
Beautiful. I absolutely love that. Okay, and Winnie, how can people get in touch with you? We are going to put all that information, guys, in the media page as well. But just for now, anybody who's watching and want to quickly connect, how can people connect with you?
You can, I'm everywhere on social media, Winnie Anderson, and at winnieanderson.com. So just track me down.
Awesome. And guys, we'll have all that information in there. Thank you so much, Winnie. It's been such a pleasure. I wish we had more time, but you know, you're going to be coming back on more shows, so we're going to have some more great
Gladly.
conversations. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Don't go anywhere. I'll be with you in a second. All right, guys, that was Winnie Anderson, the content strategist. I know that she's got a longer title, but we didn't have space, so we didn't put the whole thing. But she does a lot of amazing things. And since we're in the same field, I exactly know how good she is. So go check her out. But what I want to say is, from this entire episode, one thing that constantly keeps coming to my mind is my own mantra, CTCR, courage, truth, courage, and resilience. That's what it's all about. So just to explain you really quickly, long time ago, I decided in the darkest moment, the one thing that I need is clarity. Where do I stand right now? What's happening in my life right now? I need to know the truth. Once you have that clarity, and then CT, the truth, once you accept the truth, you find the courage to accept, okay, this is where I stand right now. The world may not know, I may not be able to or not ready to admit to the world, but this is my truth. This is what I have. This is what I don't have. These are my challenges. These are things I can't share. These are things I can't talk about. When you operate from that place of truth, there's nobody else who can scare you, because you exactly know what the truth is. And then it comes to the courage to operate from that clarity and truth, and have the courage to go and chase your dream. As I always say, dream big and make it happen on your own terms, because at the end of the day, you've only got one life and you can't keep living it for others. You have to live it on your terms. And the final thing that I say is, you do need the resilience. When you are doing something courageous, you are going to face challenges. You are going to face setbacks. Sometimes you will be disappointed, but that's where the resilience comes in handy. You have to remind yourself two things: why you started, and just look how far you have come. Just remind yourself how far you have come despite everything you've gone through. And that's what I call CTCR, or also cut the crap. So CTCR for me also stands for cut the crap. So cut the crap, all that noise, and believe in yourself, and you do it. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm Szebastian Onne, the Almost Naked CEO, entrepreneur, maker, and intention strategist. And I'm here because I care and I give a damn, and I really do. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Don't forget to subscribe.
You've got to be intentional about your dreams. Then only you can explore your true creativity.
For me, living intentionally means living with purpose and making sure that the story I create is the story I want to tell my daughters when they grow up.
Because I am